pretrip. You can start with the top of the truck with your clearance lights. Amber in color. They're not cracked. They're not damaged. They're properly mounted and secure with nuts and bolts or screws. Everything in this truck is properly mounted and secured with nuts and bolts or screws. You got your front windshield. No illegal stickers. It's not cracked. There's no cracks bigger than 1 inch. You got your windshield wiper arms are not cracked or bent. Your windshield wiper blades are not dry rotted. They're not wore out. They're properly mounted and secure with the nuts and bolts arms. The hood is properly mounted and secure with the nuts and bolts. It's not dangerously damaged. It's not going to fall apart when I'm driving. You got your front grille. It's not cracked. It's not dangerously damaged. Then you have your front headlights. The headlights are clear in color and they're not cracked or cloudy. You got your turn signals, left and right turn signals. They're amber in color. Any lights towards the front of the vehicle are going to be amber in color. Any lights towards the back are going to be red in color. You got your bumper, DOT approved bumper, properly mounted and secured. I'm going to look under the vehicle, make sure I don't have no big puddles or any kind of fluid, no oil, coolant, any kind of fluids. Make sure my truck is not leaning to either side. That's a sign of a bad shock absorber, cracked or shifted, spring leaf, or a flat tire. Then you open up the hood and you go into the engine compartment. You want to unlock it? Two hands, use your knee, bring it up, put it down slowly. Don't let it drop, you're going to break the hinges and the cables. Then it's going to drop to the ground. Look over so I can hear. We're going to start with the radiator. The radiator is properly mounted and secure. It's not cracked, it's not bent, it's not damaged. There's some more room on this side, guys.
It's good.
So your radiator is not cracked, it's not bent, it's not damaged. I don't see no big leaks on the ground. I'm going to inspect my reservoir tank. It's properly mounted and secure. It's not cracked or damaged. I don't see no leaks. Inspect all my hoses. They're not cracked. They're not frayed. They're not damaged. They're not wore out. I got the proper fluid level in it. Coolant. The cap is on. It's tight. It's not loose. You have to be pointing at the part and explaining it. This hose right here in the middle is going to lead you down to the water pump. The water pump is belt driven. It's properly mounted and secure. It's not cracked or damaged. I don't see no big leaks in the ground. I'm going to inspect all my belts. The belts, shoot the video of that. What I'm saying, don't shoot me.
Yeah, no, I know the part. I'll escucharlo.
Más allá, nomás a mí no.
Okay,
So your belts are not cracked, frayed, or damaged. They're not dangerously thin. They're not wore out. No less than 3/4 of an inch of slack on the belt. This is your alternator. It's properly mounted and secure with the nuts and bolts. Inspect my wires. They're not cut, cracked, frayed, or damaged. My connectors are tight. They're not loose. No corrosion. My windshield washer fluid, reservoir tank, properly mounted and secure with nuts and bolts. I got the proper fluid level in it. There's fluid in it. This is my frame, the frame of the truck. It's not cracked, bent, or damaged. No illegal welds. This is my shock absorber, properly mounted and secure with the nuts and bolts. It's not cracked, bent, or damaged. It's properly mounted and secure, and I don't see no big leaks in the ground. This is my, when you point to the spring mounts, just point at the front one and say spring mounts, and then point at the back and say spring hanger. Just say both of them. When they're grading you, they have both of them together. So just say both, that way they can give you credit right off the bat. So your spring mounts and spring hangers are properly mounted and secure with the nuts and bolts. My lift springs, they're not cracked, they're not bent, they're not damaged, they're not shifted. My U-bolts, the U-bolts are properly mounted and secure, they're tight, they're not loose. Then you go in here, you have your brake chamber. You got the brake chamber and the slack adjuster.
Brake chamber.
So the brake chamber is properly mounted and secure with the nuts and bolts. I'm gonna inspect my air hose. It's not cracked, frayed, or damaged. I don't hear no air leaks or no audible leaks. Then I got the slack adjuster is properly mounted and secure. That's connected to the chamber at 90 degrees. All the cotter keys are present. None of them are missing. And there's no more than 1 inch of play in the push rod. Then I got my brake drums and my brake linings. They're not dangerously thin, no less than 1/4 inch thin. No grease, no debris. Then I go to the tire. Inspect my inner sidewall, my outer sidewall. It's not dry rotted, it's not cracked, it's not damaged. I don't hear no air leaks. Inspect the top of the tire. It's evenly wore. I got 4/32 of thread depth in the front tire, and I have a virgin tire in the front. No cuts, no bulges. I have at least 100 pounds of air pressure in the tire. I'm gonna use a tire pressure gauge to check the air pressure in the tire through the valve stem. The valve stem, the cap is on, it's tight, it's not loose. Right there. The wheel is properly mounted and secure with the lug nuts and bolts. They're tight, they're not loose, none of them are missing. The wheel is not cracked, bent, or damaged, and there's no illegal welds. This is my hub. The hub is properly mounted and secure with the nuts and bolts. I got the proper fluid level in it, and I got the seal present, it's not missing. I don't see no leaks in the ground. Any questions? Let's go to the other side. Now on the suspension parts, what you just said on the other side is going to be the same thing on this side. So if you can remember that side, you'll remember this side. But where you have to explain it on the right side and then the left side, you have to talk on this side. Although you're going to sound like a tape recorder, you got to talk, you got to explain it. Over here, we're going to start with the air compressor and governor. Bless you. Air compressor and governor. Properly mounted and secure with the nuts and bolts. And it's belt driven. Inspect my belts. They're not cracked, frayed, or damaged. They're not dry rotted. There's no more than 4/32 of thread depth in the slack. 3/4 of an inch of slack on the belt. The oils, dipstick oil, if you pull it out, it's got to be between the add and full marks. If it's low, you add whatever amount to get it up to level.
Transmission on the other side, right?
Huh?
Transmission dipstick?
No, it's a stick.
Okay.
Yeah. You doing an auto? Yeah, we'll show you that in the this is my reservoir tank for my power steering fluid. It's properly mounted and secure with the nuts and bolts. The cap is on, it's tight, it's not loose. Inspect my hoses, they're not cracked, frayed, or damaged. I don't see no leaks in the ground. I'm also going to inspect my power steering pump. The pump is under the alternator on the passenger side. Under the alternator, it's a long one right on the other side. It's gear driven. I don't see no leaks in the ground. This is my frame of the truck again. It's not cracked, bent, or damaged. No illegal welds. My steering linkage, it's not cracked, bent, or damaged. And there's no more than 2 inches of free play in the steering linkage. 10 degrees, 10%. Either or. My gearbox is properly mounted and secure with the nuts and bolts. I don't see no big leaks in the ground. I got my pitman arm and my drag link and my tie rod end. You can make me sneeze now. So the pitman arm, the drag link, and the tie rod end are properly mounted and secure. They're not cracked, bent, or damaged. I got a castle nut right here, and the cotter key is present. It's not missing. Then I go back to my suspension. I got my spring mounts and spring hangers properly mounted and secure with the nuts and bolts. Go to the spring lifts again. They're not cracked, bent, or damaged. They're not shifted. The U-bolts properly mounted and secure. They're tied. They're not loose. My shock absorber properly mounted and secure. It's not cracked, bent, or damaged. I don't see no leaks in the ground. Then I got my brake chamber properly mounted and secure with the nuts and bolts. The air hose is not cracked, frayed, or damaged. I don't hear no air leaks. The slack adjuster is properly mounted and secure with the nuts and bolts, and is connected to the chamber at 90 degrees. There's no more than 1 inch of play in the push rod. All the cotter keys are present. You go in here again, you got your brake drum and your brake linings. No grease, no debris. They're not dangerously thin. No less than 1/4 inch thin. Spec your inner sidewall, your outer